Hey, Hannah.
Hey, Jess.
You know what's something that we've talked about a lot on this podcast?
What?
Classics. And you
Okay.
know what else we talk about a lot? The books that will be surrounding us when we're old. Okay?
Real.
And so, you know what we're talking about today?
What?
The books that will be classics when we're old.
Oh my gosh. I'm so surprised.
There we go. Intro. Boom. Done.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we should just continue this way where I have no warning. Because you just keep like coming out with stuff. Great. Excellent.
I live to please.
Oh, girl, we
How
know.
are you?
I'm okay. Having a rough week. A lot going on. Not really. That's a lie. It's honestly just the fact that I'm trying to apply for a grad school program and it's going fine. Doing that is sort of bringing up a lot of like insecurity and imposter syndrome and stuff. Like it's just bringing up a lot of stuff for me. And then since I feel that way, it's just sort of like permeating everything else in my life right now. And so I feel like I'll feel a lot better when the application is done and I no longer have to advertise myself. And
Totally.
I just have to wait. But for the moment, we're dealing with a little bit of anxiety.
It's hard to show yourself off sometimes. But
Yeah.
you're doing
Yeah.
great. I heard one of her essays and like I was astounded. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
confident.
I'm hoping that the admissions committee will also be astounded and wowed by it. We'll see. I'll feel better as soon as the application is in. But for now,
Totally.
I'm a little bit like wired and kind of stressed out. But that's okay. It's okay. It's part of the human experience, and I'm vibing with it. I'm wearing comfy clothes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm being nice to myself. So
Good.
and I'm drinking my water.
Good.
That's the most important thing. Drink your water and have a good day on purpose. That's how we're getting through it. We vibing. That's all I got going on. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I got my first Kindle yesterday and I am just thrilled. Okay. I got a Kindle Paperwhite. My family gave it to me for my birthday. And the case arrives today as well. It's going to be clear with a little green strap on the back.
Ooh, very
Uh-huh,
nice.
uh-huh. And Jared was working yesterday, and he came home and he's like, "You looked so sad when I looked at you through the window, and then I come inside and you actually just have a Kindle in your lap." And I was like, "Yeah, basically, I was having a great time."
Well, yeah, because you're just like sitting there looking down, like straight faced, like
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, then he picked it up and he was like, "Your phone is never going to die again." And it's like, "No, it is not." So
yeah.
we are very excited about that.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, I decided that I was going to finish all of my currently reading Kindle books at the new year. Like I like to finish out my current reads before I start anything new. So I've finished 3 books in a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there was Mall Priest, there was The Ritual, and there was The Eyes of the Best Part.
Okay.
So I've just been balls to the wall on books, so to speak.
Yeah.
Excuse my French, but yeah, it's been good.
Nice, nice. How were they?
They were pretty good. Mall Priest was a 4-star. Ritual was also a 4-star, and The Eyes Are the Best Part. I gave 3 stars. So overall, decent.
Yeah, having a good reading month. What are you currently reading?
Currently,
Yeah.
I'm reading A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal.
Hafsa Faisal.
Faisal,
Yeah,
thank you.
I got you.
Hmm. And yep, it's a fantasy. It's got vampires.
Yeah, we got her, guys.
We're enjoying it.
You're
It's
secretly
pretty
Team
good.
Goblin.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm also reading a book that I will talk about a little bit more later. But it's a doozy.
All right.
So
Cool.
we'll get into that.
Cool.
On that note, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. So my first book that I think will be a classic one day is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Now, I'm going to give you the description and then you're going to have to hear me out. Okay.
In case you need the description.
Yeah, in case you need the description. So the description is, Isabella Swan's move to Forks, a small, perpetually rainy town in Washington, could have been the most boring move she ever made. But once she meets the mysterious and alluring Edward Cullen, Isabella's life takes a thrilling and terrifying turn. Up until now, Edward has managed to keep his vampire identity a secret in the small town he lives in, but now nobody is safe, especially Isabella, the person Edward holds most dear. The lovers find themselves balanced precariously on the point of a knife between desire and danger.
So, firstly, I didn't know her name was Isabella.
Yeah, so that was going to be my first comment. They call her Isabella in the description. She is not once ever called Isabella in the book.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fucking stupid.
They just call her Bella. So, but her name is Isabella, I'm pretty sure. But they just call her Bella.
I mean, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't, right?
I don't know. I just copied my descriptions from Storygraph, so who knows?
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so that's the description in case you have been living under a rock and don't know what Twilight is. So, now, listen. This is on my list, not because this is necessarily good literature, but because I feel like this book is going down in history. Like, this book was girlhood for so many people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Twilight walked so that romantasy could run. And I feel like that kind of cultural impact tends to go into the makings of a classic.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. And teenage girls will always be teenage girls. And Twilight embodies teenage girlhood in a way that is so accurate that it's absolutely timeless. Like, no matter when you're from, as a teenage girl, you're going to relate to the teenage girlhood in Twilight. And, like, even I find myself thinking back to being a teenage girl and relating to these experiences portrayed in the book. Like, not even necessarily, like, the plot, but, like, the description of, like, the anxiety and the angst and the emotion and the drama and all of that is so bang on for the teenage girl experience. And I think that timelessness of that, and also like how wildly popular it was in conjunction with that impact on like romance as a genre and like romantasy and that kind of thing, I feel like Twilight's going to go down in history.
Fair. That is, I'd say, a pretty good prediction. I do have a confession to make.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not only have I never read the books, I've also never seen a Twilight movie, but like I have heard enough about it that it's just like, yeah, obviously. Like, I'm basically just not watching it out of spite at this point. But I do agree with you.
I am currently reading Twilight as a buddy read with a friend of mine. We decided we were going to annotate them, and to read it as an almost 24-year-old woman, wild. I'm making fun of Bella in the margins constantly. However, I do remember the experience, and I know that like a lot of teenage girls would relate to like the internal sort of monologue going on. And I have only seen the first movie and the last movie, and based on the context clues, I can guess the rest of the movie situation. So like I know the whole plot.
Gotcha.
But I feel like Twilight by Stephanie Meyer is gonna go down in history. And I also added this on there just out of like a little bit of irony, because do you remember in Mr. Parr's class at some point he said, or he had a poster up or something like that about how
Star Wars?
No, about
he had
how
a lot
like
of posters. Okay. I'm listening.
He did. About how Shakespeare is forever, but no one's going to be talking about Stephanie Meyer in 400 years.
I don't know why I first thought of the Star Wars poster.
I don't
Holy
know
shit.
either.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But like,
you think they will be?
I a little bit want people to be talking about Stephanie Meyer in 400 years just because Mr. Parr said they wouldn't be.
Valid.
Yeah. I just feel like Twilight will be around for a while, I feel.
Lovely. So my list, I've kind of sandwiched my list. Okay. So I'm going to start with a crazy one. And then I've got some novels. And then I'm going to end on an even crazier one. Okay.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So first up is House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski. It is an experience. So the summary is, House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski is a complex and layered novel that intertwines multiple narratives and themes. The story primarily revolves around a family that moves into a seemingly ordinary house on Ash Tree Lane, only to discover that the house has a mysterious room that is larger on the inside than on the outside and grows into a labyrinth maze. The family, led by the photojournalist Will Davidson, attempts to explore and document this anomaly, leading to a series of inexplicable and terrifying events. The novel is structured as a collection of documents and footnotes, with the main narrative being a manuscript written by a blind man named Zampano, who analyzes a fictional documentary called The Davidson Record. Johnny Truant, a young tattoo artist, discovers this manuscript after Zampano's death and becomes obsessed with the understanding and publishing of it. As Truant delves deeper into the manuscript, his own mental state deteriorates, mirroring the disorienting and horrifying experiences of the Davidson family.
Damn.
Yeah. So, like I said, full-on experience to read that I think is pretty darn rare to come across. And each year since I've read it, I think I read it 2 years ago, just more and more people keep popping up that have read it. Like, I believe last year I came across just like someone in the wild that they're like, oh, I don't read a lot, but like when I do, it's something like House of Leaves or something like that. And I had just had a moment, like record scratch, freeze frame. What did you just say? And so it's reaching larger and audiences.
It's reaching audiences. It is.
It's reaching audiences. And yeah, I can see that trend continuing to grow because I have a feeling this book it's going to end up having the identity of a cryptid where everyone's heard of it, but only like the believers of the weird have like really gotten into it.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, because like, for example, there's a section in this book where the pages have less and less words on each one, and they're getting smaller and smaller into the center of the page. So you're continuously having to flip the pages faster and faster, in turn making you feel the anxiety of the character. And unmatched. Okay? Period. And that's an experience that like that can't be turned into a movie. You know?
Yeah.
So I think it deserves to be a classic one day. Purely just the creativity that had to go into making that was insane. And I don't know of a lot of other books like that, especially that came out around the same time as it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like also thematically it has a lot of critical literary merit in terms of like flipping the pages faster to feel the anxiety and things like that. Like there's a lot of devices, like literary devices and things sort of at play there that deal with some themes that are significant. And so I feel like that also, so like that in combination with popularity and the uniqueness of the experience of reading it, that definitely sounds like the makings of a classic to me. And I've not even read it.
Exactly.
Cool. My next one that I think is going to be a classic, that I think should be a classic, is The Past is Read by Catherine M. Valente, which is, I think, my favorite book of all time. I'm calling it. It's no longer The Glass Castle. The Past is Read by Catherine M. Valente is my favorite book of all time.
Wow. Mark the day.
Mark the day. It's January 19th today. So the summary is, the future is blue, endless blue, except for a few small places that float across the hot, drowned world left behind by long-gone fossil fuel guzzlers. One of those patches is a magical place called Garbage Town. Tetley Abednego is the most beloved girl in Garbage Town, but she's the only one who knows it. She's the only one who knows a lot of things, that Garbage Town is the most wonderful place in the world, that it's full of hope, that you can love someone and 66% hate them all at the same time. But Earth is a terrible mess. Hope is a fragile thing, and a lot of people are very angry with her. Then Tetley discovers a new friend, a terrible secret, and more to her world than she ever expected. So this is a sort of new subgenre of sci-fi dystopian called cli-fi, which is climate fiction. It has sort of emerged in the last 20 years or so. And I'm a big fan of climate fiction, personally. And this book is a very poetic way of addressing and talking about climate change and hope and all of that. So aside from being the most lyrical, beautiful, wonderful, heartbreaking, hopeful piece of literature I have ever encountered in my life, this book is unbelievably relevant because the climate crisis is universally relevant. And this book's approach to it, as well as the discussion of hope and dread and helplessness and like character relationships and how relationships are formed but also fall apart in the face of this kind of tragedy and adversity. It's just absolutely brilliant the way this book approaches all of those things. And it's also very much a classic predicting the future kind of a thing, because this is set like years and years and years from now after the climate crisis happens, and all that's left on Earth, like the ocean levels have risen, and all that's left on Earth is giant floating piles of garbage, which is where the only people left live. Because that's the only place there is to go. There's no land. And so it's just very relevant to our future and the way things are going and things like that. And it addresses like how the government's failed and how like people are just kind of helpless. But then in spite of that, there is hope. And the book just talks about that in a way that I think is really relevant. And so like it's very 1984 of like it's like predicting the future of like where we're going to go and what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like all of that is what will make it a classic one day. And I also just love it. I also just love it. And I feel like everyone in the whole world needs to read this. Like anyone who's ever struggled with having hope or has like dread about the climate crisis or anything like that, like you need to read this book. Tetley is my hero, and my favorite line from a book ever is from this book, and it is, "The kind of hope I have isn't just greed going by its maiden name." Ooh. Yeah. It's a good book.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's also like not crazy long, right?
No, it's really short. I think it's like 100 and something pages.
So it's an easy read at that.
Yeah, it's well, it's short to get through, but the language is very lyrical. It's very poetic. I've never highlighted so much in my life. And it deals with a lot of really heavy things in a really compact way that it just breaks your heart and then puts it together again in a way that's like very real and relevant universally because it's in the context of the climate crisis. So that's The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valente.
Nice. So Hannah's going to have to prepare herself for this one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
My next one is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Basterica.
Oh my God. Okay. I agree with you. I'm going to just start by saying that I agree with you.
Right out
it's probably going to be a classic, but I'm not happy about it. Proceed.
Okay. His wife has left him. His father is sinking into dementia, and Marcos tries not to think too hard about how he makes a living. After all, it happened so quickly. First, it was reported that an infectious virus has made all animal meat poisonous to humans. Then, governments initiated the transition. Now, eating human meat, quote unquote special meat, is legal. Marcos tries to stick to numbers, consignment, processing. Then one day he's given a gift, a live specimen of the finest quality, though he's aware that any form of personal contact is forbidden on pain of death. Little by little, he starts to treat her like a human being. And soon he becomes tortured by what has been lost and what might still be saved. This book has made too many waves to not be considered a classic horror one day. Okay? It stirred the pot, it heebed the jeebies, and it will continue to do so. And, like, I've already been talking about it for years. I'm positive others will be too. It became so big so quickly, but, like, also on such a taboo topic that some people will just refuse to read it, while others, like, I read it in a day. Pardon the pun, I gobbled that shit up, okay? And, and I just feel like it's got many more years of that to come.
Period.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm really mad about it, but I fully agree with you. So many people have been talking about it. It's brought up a lot of discourse. It deals with a lot of issues about morality and humanity and what makes a person and what makes them just an animal. And I feel like those are all really relevant topics and always have been. Like, even historically in Gothic literature, that's a common theme.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like it just hit all the nails on the head of what a classic horror should be, but in a modern tone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's my prediction.
Cool. My next one, talk about humanity, is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And I must preface this by saying that I have not actually read it. What actually happened was I had the whole box set when I was 12 or 13 maybe, I don't know. My friend, Jenna, you know who you are, borrowed it from me to read it before I had read it. And she kept it for a decade.
Jenna.
And then, I think it was last year or the year before, she wrapped it and gifted it back to me for Christmas.
Jenna. Oh my God.
As a joke. We did like a proper
okay.
gift exchange.
As long as it was like aware.
No, yeah,
like,
we were joking.
Oh my God. That's wow.
She borrowed this book from me and had it for like
I feel
10
like, girl,
years.
these are yours.
She read it like 5 or 6 times. Like, she loves this book series. Good. And then wrapped it and added it to my gifts for Christmas a couple of years ago.
Wow.
I mean, like, here.
That's quite a story.
She was like, I was going through my childhood bedroom and I found this. You can have it back now. I'm like,
crazy.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, she read it like 5 or 6 times. Her brother read it. Like, they just had this book series forever.
Hey, as long as they were well loved.
They were, and they're in really good condition still. She gave them back in the condition I gave them to her in, which is impressive after 10 years.
Nice.
10 years and several moves. But she did. She gave them back to me. So I still haven't read them, but I do have them back. But anyways, all that to say, though, I've seen the movies. I know a ton about the books. So I feel like I had to add it to my prediction list. So, the summary. In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. Katniss is a 16-year-old girl living with her mother and younger sister in the poorest district of Panem, the remains of what used to be the United States. Long ago, the district waged war on the capital and were defeated. As part of the surrender terms, each district agreed to send one boy and one girl to appear in an annual televised event called the Hunger Games. The terrain, the rules, and level of audience participation may change, but one thing is constant: kill or be killed. When Kat's sister is chosen by lottery, Kat steps up to go in her place. Without really meaning to, Katniss becomes a contender. But if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. So I think this will be a classic because it's the perfect balance between being a popular book with the general public while also having critical literary merit and acclaim, which I believe are the two main ingredients in making a classic.
Fair.
It's socially relevant, politically relevant, and also it's just a really good book, and like it's entertaining in a way that makes it really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the themes and topics about our society and also about humanity and the question of morality and what people are capable of. There's a great deal of philosophical reference as well. So I feel like this book is not going away. Like I can imagine, like when I think about the books that were taught to me in school, like Lord of the Flies and things like that.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, I can see in 50 years, teachers in high schools teaching the Hunger Games similarly to how we were taught Lord of the Flies and Fahrenheit 451.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because it's in that same realm, and the time difference between us and Lord of the Flies and, you know, in the decades to come in the Hunger Games, like it's sort of like looking back culturally at how people were thinking about these sort of philosophical questions and dealing with the dynamics of inequality and things like that. Like those are all culturally relevant, and I feel like they'll still be relevant even if they change shape over the years. And if nothing else, it'll be a way to look back and see like the way that our time and our culture comes through in things like the Hunger Games, which is a lot of what literary study is of classics, of just like using classics in context to like basically be a window to the past. And I feel like the Hunger Games is a perfect example of that. So I just think it'll become a classic.
Yeah, I have to say I do agree with that, especially like the classroom a bit.
Yeah.
Kids are definitely going to be studying that shit.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. For sure. There's just so much there, and it's wildly popular.
Yeah.
Which is impressive.
Yeah.
It's impressive also. Like it's uncommon for something to be considered like good literature and also is popular in the entertainment side of things. Like it's hard to balance both. So that's another reason why I just think that this is set up nicely to become a classic.
Next, I have Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. And so 24-year-old British painter Cleo has escaped from England to New York and is still finding her place in the sleepless city when, a few months before her student visa ends, she meets Frank. 20 years older and a self-made success, Frank's life is full of the excesses Cleo's lacks. He offers her the chance to be happy, the freedom to paint, and the opportunity to apply for a green card. But their impulsive marriage irreversibly changes both their lives and the lives of those close to them in ways they never could have predicted. To me, this book is the poster child of contemporary novels. It's so raw, it's emotional, it has the ability to just like reach into you so deeply and emotionally that I feel like this book could still be read in a century from now. Like I feel like Coco Malors is the Jane Austen of the 2000s.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. Yeah.
Bold statement.
Like she's got her own flavor of just like a photo of a life that her books just like follow. Like Cleopatra and Frankenstein, Blue Sisters, like it's centered around these just like real life people. And I feel like that's just timeless in a sense.
Yeah. And also humans will never stop being interested in the lives of other humans.
Exactly. And like hers just captures a life so beautifully that, yeah, I just don't see it getting old ever. I hope she just like keeps pumping out books for a really long time. Because yeah, I would love to be reading her for years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point of like people are nosy.
Mm-hmm.
And humanity's kind of obsessed with itself.
Exactly.
And I feel like books like that, like even like looking back on the classics that I've read, most of them are just like someone's life, like some character.
That is all Jane Austen wrote about.
Yeah.
It's all the Brontes wrote about.
Yeah. Just someone's life in the time period that they're writing in.
And I feel like that's also what Coco Malors is doing. So,
yeah, like most classics would have been contemporary at their time, like as a genre.
Yeah. If you were reading them in the 1800s, that's contemporary.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like contemporary novels now will be the classics of later.
This is our, like, mic drop moment for the episode.
Yeah, well,
I feel like we just, like, unlocked something.
Well, seriously, like, when you think about classics, how many of them are fantasy? How many of them are romance? Like, just purely romance with nothing else going on, you know? Like usually it's the contemporary novels or like horror or maybe dystopian sort of sci-fi situation. But for the most part, it's just the contemporary lit fic of the time becomes classics later.
It's the slice of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone wants to know what life is like in a certain time. And I feel like Coco Malors is going to be that voice for the 2000s.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wait, hold on. like when you think about history, like we all know the major events and everything like that, but like what people want to know is like the day-to-day life and like what things were really like and things like that. Like if you look at like how much people study poetry, like that's why they're studying. That's usually the motivation for studying poetry.
Day to day.
Damn, okay, you really ate that up with that one.
Yeah. And I didn't even go to school for this.
You don't have to. This is like
that's the point.
I was talking to my friend last night, actually, Anika, our music guy. She came over and we were having a movie night. And we ended up talking about like literature and media and like how we consume media. And I was talking about like English literature and what being an English major is like and what that academia looks like. And she just stops me and she's like, I love how unseriously you take your degree. I'm like, yeah, like literally people in English literature, like, I'm so sorry, not to minimize anything, like any degree in anything is so impressive and such hard work. Like that's not to say like there's like I'm not being dismissive at all. Like I've done the degree and it was hard.
You're doing it.
Yeah, it's hard. That this is not to say that, but like sometimes people get so pretentious and up on their high horse because like they read classics and they read literary fiction and literary criticism and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, you've made an entire academic career around the ability to read. Yeah.
And here I am just going, oh, Coco Malors is the new Jane Austen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you don't have to, you don't need all that. You can, if you're passionate about it and you'd enjoy it. Yeah. And you do get a lot
by
from
all
it.
means.
And it is hard and it is a real degree. Don't get me wrong. However, you really don't have to do all that to be considered a good reader. Yeah. I feel like our dynamic is such a testament to that, I feel.
Exactly. Big time.
Okay. Anyways, we digress. My next one, I've sort of gone the children's classics route with Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, just the whole series in general. So Goosebumps is a series of horror novels written by American author R.L. Stine. The books are aimed at children and feature teen or preteen protagonists who find themselves in frightening circumstances involving the supernatural, paranormal, and or the occult.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this will become a children's classic specifically. And I think it's because Goosebumps has everything that children's classics have. Like adventure, spunky young protagonists, mystery, monsters, kids taking things into their own hands. There's this sort of mysticism and wonder about it. Even if it is horror, it's still like magic. And so like when I think back on like children's classics that I've read, like, you know, Gulliver's Travels and like The Borrowers and things like that, I feel like Goosebumps, even being horror, falls into that sort of category. And also this series holds up even now after things for kids have changed since they were originally published. I think the first one, like they were in like the 90s or something like that.
True. Yeah. Like I'm planning to get my brother some.
Yeah, exactly. And so like they hold up even now as things have changed. And so I can't see why they wouldn't continue to hold up as time goes on, because there's sort of this time capsule of a very nostalgic time that I think will carry them into classichood. Like I feel like
Totally.
I feel like they'll continue to bring that nostalgia and things like that will continue to appeal to people as time goes on.
Yeah, that and like how many people our age are like even getting into rereading them right now?
Me.
Like, yeah, like Jared grew up obsessed with the books. You're rereading them. You're making me think about rereading them. I know someone else that read one or two of them last year. They're kind of swinging back around right now, slowly, but I feel like surely, and yeah, I 100% agree once again.
Yeah, because I feel also another reason why they might be swinging around is I feel like we're sort of in this weird generational spot where
Everything's a remake.
that too, but also that like we were sort of the last kids who played outside
Oh yeah.
and like still remember VHS.
My baby photos are on a camera. All my other siblings' baby photos are on smartphones.
Yeah, you know, like we were the
That
last
blows my
ones who
mind.
remember what it was like before the internet and before social media and what it was like to be a kid before all of those things. And like, you know, like getting up early on a Saturday morning in your pajamas to watch, you know, Looney Tunes on TV. And instead of like partying, like 13-year-olds are getting wild anyways. But like,
Period. Yeah.
like,
It's
so
a
I
lot.
feel like we are sort of in this weird in between where we're part of that generation of like the internet and social media and all of those things in the digital age, but we remember enough about the time before that we sort of long for that. And so in like adulthood, early adulthood, you kind of come back around to things like Goosebumps or old TV shows you used to watch as a kid, or, you know, cartoons and things like that, that come back around because you sort of want that again.
Yeah. Like we watch Adventure Time all the time as well.
Yeah, like Avatar The Last Airbender, like
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So like I feel like we're also just generationally in a spot where we're kind of longing for that, and I feel like Goosebumps as a series kind of provides that in a way, especially because like it was written in the 90s, and so
It just oozes 90s vibes.
yeah, and like it's got the nostalgia, and like, you know, it's sort of like R.L. Stine also throughout the books like sprinkles in a lot of like kids just being kids. Like there's one part where someone's like, oh, I'm gonna be late for my piano lesson, I have to go, you deal with this monster for now. Like, you know. And so it sort of is a time capsule of what childhood was like in sort of like the quote unquote golden age of childhood, you know? And so I think that will continue to be relevant as we move forward, especially with this like resurgence that's kind of happening, because everyone our age just desperately wants to go back to that. And so I think that could turn it into a classic for sure.
I concur. Next is one that we have spoken about before. It is A Man Called Ovi by Frederick Backman. Ovi, Ova. I heard someone call him Ove once, and that hurt my feelings. So, Ovi is almost certainly the grumpiest man you will ever meet. He thinks himself surrounded by idiots, joggers, neighbors who can't reverse a trailer properly, and shop assistants who talk in code. But isn't it rare these days to find such an old-fashioned clarity of belief and deed, such unswerving conviction about what the world should be, and a lifelong dedication to making it just so? In the end, you will see, there is something about Ovi that is quite irresistible. I picked this book because of something our dear sweet mascot said to me.
Grant.
Grant. So Grant came up to me at Christmas after listening to our Ovi episode, and he said, I thought it was so cool that both of you went into it with low expectations, not expecting to like it at all, and that we both absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuck with me after like hearing that, like that's what stuck out from that episode. And I was like, that's really cool. And I feel like a lot of people have had that experience with that book where they're like, it's just a story about an old man who just wants to die. Great. But then you read it and you become attached and you see, the humanity of it. And it just makes you appreciate those around you just a little bit more. And, as technology keeps advancing so rapidly and those connections become harder to come across, I feel like that feeling of closeness that Ovi gives the reader will just become more valuable over time.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And even if it doesn't become a classic, I still think it should.
Yeah.
But it is quite popular,
it.
Which is also impressive because that's Friedrich Bachmann's debut novel.
It is. And he's written a number so far. I will read another one at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made some waves.
It did. And I was just thinking as you were talking about how like you go into it not expecting to like it, maybe because like it doesn't necessarily have like the intrigue, the mystery, the like attention grabbing taglines, things like that. Like it has none of that. It just is what it is. And so you go into it like, oh, okay, whatever. And then it just taps into your humanity and like your feelings and emotions and like what makes people and like the wonderful things about being a human and having community or not having community and things like that just like, at least for me when I read it, it sort of reminded me to be a person.
Yeah, it's very Mr. Rogers in that sense.
Yeah, sort of. And so I feel like that will continue to be important given the direction that everything is going. And so, yeah, I definitely agree that could for sure become a classic. Cool. My next and final one is The Fifth Season by Anika Jahagirdar.
Are we surprised?
No, we're not. This is my favorite series of all time. The Past is Read, favorite book of all time. The Fifth Season, favorite series of all time. And I was actually introduced to this book in a class. So
there we go.
It can and has been taught as literature. So for the summary, this is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land long familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon, and where there is no mercy. So I think that this book will be a classic because it does two very important things. This book has historical significance, being an allegory for slavery in our history, and also various issues across the diaspora and the impacts and implications of events in our history, in Black history. It encompasses that and it tells those stories. So it does that. And also it has a lot of significance to the future and how we as humanity move forward from those past events. And it talks about the future sort of in a context of activism and moving forward as a united front towards equality and change and progress in a positive direction. That is a little bit predicting the future-y, like same as The Past is Read, same as 1984 and books like that. And you get multiple timelines. Like it's already set way in the future, but it also, you get another timeline of even in the future from that future that it's talking about. It's really cool. And it also, like, the climate comes into it, and like nature and the natural world, and how like ultimately it's humanity's impact on the earth sort of coming back around to haunt them and things like that, that I just feel like is very relevant on multiple fronts, like in the socio-political sense and also in like the ecological sense. And it weaves those two things together really beautifully with both historical and future significance. And I think that everyone in at least the Western North American world must read this book. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you read. I don't care what genres you usually like. I feel like this book is important. It's important. And so something with that kind of significance must go down in history as a classic. Like, there's no way. And it's become very popular in recent years. All 3 books in the series won a Hugo Award. Like, it's an award-winning novel series, and people are already teaching it in schools, like in university. And so I feel like it's on the cusp. Like, it's going to become a classic, I really think. And that's also all that to say, like, that's not even scratching the surface of what brilliant writing, beautiful and diverse characters, the emotional depth and gripping plot that this book has. And it's in an interesting format as well, so it's a bit of an experience. Like, it's written in stream of consciousness. Ooh. And some of the POVs are third person, some of them are second person, and some of them are first. So, like, there's just, like, lots of different characters, lots of different ways that you're getting in the minds of these characters and the events of this world and the landscape and all of those things. So it just does a lot of cool stuff, and I feel like that will make it a classic. Yeah, it's really cool.
I love a funky format.
Yeah, so not even talking about the historical and future significance of this book. There's still a lot there, and thematically there's a lot going on, and in terms of literary devices and things like that. It's just a good book. It's hard. It's a hard read. It's not an easy read at all. Which also I feel like is kind of part of being classic as well. Like,
true.
Like, classics are hard usually.
Yep.
So I feel like, yeah, it has a lot going for it to become a classic.
I agree. It does. It does. I haven't read it yet, but Hannah will make me at some point. So, you remember how I said my list was a sandwich?
Yeah, pivot.
This is the other side of the bun. Okay. So, keep in mind, the first side was House of Leaves. The second bun half is S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. I am currently reading this book. I'm about a quarter into it, but already I'm confident, okay? Because just like how House of Leaves is an experience, this one's an even bigger one. So, a young woman picks up a book left behind by a stranger. Inside it are his margin notes, which reveal a reader entranced by the story and by its mysterious author. She responds with notes of her own, leaving the book for the stranger, and so begins an unlikely conversation that plunges them both into the unknown. The book, Ship of Theseus, the final novel by a prolific but enigmatic writer named V.M. Straka, in which a man with no past is shanghaied onto a strange ship with a monstrous crew and launched into a disorienting and perilous journey. The writer, Straka, the incendiary and secretive subject of one of the world's greatest mysteries, a revolutionary about whom the world knows nothing apart from the words he wrote and the rumors that swirl around him. And the readers, Jennifer and Eric, a college senior and a disgraced grad student, both facing crucial decisions about who they are, who they might become, and how much they're willing to trust another person with their passions, hurts, and fears. This book is described as J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst's love letter to the written word. And that is just so romantic. And so basically, picture this. This is a book that comes in a box, okay? You take it out of the box, and you open it up and you realize that there are loose pieces of paper like throughout the book. So you're going, oh my God, like what is going on here? Like there's like newspaper clippings, there's letters. And then you look a little closer and you realize that there are annotations printed on the page in two different forms of writing. So there's the, more masculine writing, Eric, and the cursive, which is Jennifer. Okay. And so you're reading the story of the ship of Theseus while also reading them work out the mystery of the author and like what happened and who he is. And you're basically reading two books at once. It's so crazy. And like, it's a lot, but it grips you. Like you want to know more about like them as people. You want to know if they ever actually meet in person. And yeah, it's one of those books where it's like, again, you're not going to get this experience if it were turned into a movie. Like it just won't translate. And something like that, I feel like, is something that is worth being remembered for a long time.
Yeah, books like that are just so special. And so like they'll be remembered.
It's just like one of those once in a generation type books. And yeah, I feel like those ones, they've got the power to live,
They've got the power to live.
To live on. Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
So yeah. So when we are both, 87, our husbands have died and we live together with a huge library in our house with 14 cats, those will be classics.
These will be on our classics shelf.
Yeah.
Eventually
sure
our first editions from the 2020s.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Will be
first
sitting on our
edition
classic
Twilight.
shelf. First edition Twilight. I don't even have a first edition Twilight.
We'll find them.
Mine's not first edition. But wow, yeah. That'll be on our classic shelf. Oh, all right.
Oh, perfect. Well, if there are books that you think we missed or that you just think will also be on that shelf one day, you are not only welcome to, but encouraged to tell us about them.
Email me
on Instagram or Threads at Badly Annotated Pod, or on emailing Hannah at badlyannotedpod@gmail.com, as well as you can find all of our links, including Fable, where to stream, etc., through the link in our Instagram bio. And with that, best wishes, kindest regards.
Sincerely, Jess and Hannah.